All right. Welcome to the first episode of the We Need to Talk podcast. And actually, that may not be the name, but we're working on it, right? But we have kind of like start ugly and then clean it up as you go. So we want to get started. So if that ends up being the name, great. If it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
But I am one half of your host. I'm Rod, and this is my lovely wife.
I am Ariel.
And so the We Need to Talk podcast is a relationship podcast, a marriage podcast. I mean, I guess relationships work in that too, but more specifically about marriage, how to have a long lasting, loving, amazing relationship with your partner.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we can suggest that you do as well, I guess. So I guess we should probably start the first episode kind of giving a little bit about who we are and why we're qualified to have a podcast about marriages and relationships.
Right.
And being the gentleman, knowing that chivalry is no longer dead. We're bringing it back. I'm going to toss it over to my wife because I know she wants to talk first.
Okay. All right. I did not want to talk first, but that's okay. But, okay, a little bit about who we are. Well, I am a therapist, or psychotherapist, I guess, because there's a lot of different types of therapists, but, I'm a therapist. I've worked with a lot of couples. I've done marriage, therapy before. And that's like my professional background, but personally, I have been married for almost 15 years now. In September will be 15 years. And we dated for about 9 years right before, 9 years, got engaged, got married pretty quickly after we got engaged, about 6 months in. So we've been together for a very long time. And in addition, we have lots of married friends and, been able to see different things within marriages within our own family. So we have 2 kids. Yes.
Right.
And we waited about, which I'm sure we'll talk about that, at some point in the podcast, waited about 5 years before we started having kids. So we were together for 9, married for 5, then we started having kids.
Right. Yeah. And so I am a coach, and there's a lot of things that kind of fall under that umbrella. I do some strength and conditioning where I work with athletes in person, helping them be bigger, faster, stronger. I do some online personal training. So I work with clients virtually kind of all over the country, specifically working with dads, busy dads who are trying to lose some weight and kind of get their edge back, if you will. And then I do some kind of more consulting, fatherhood related. I kind of found my passion when I became a father. And so I've been pursuing, expanding that and helping others become better fathers. That's me professionally. Personally, again, like obviously we're in the relationship together. And let me clear up, right? So people will be watching this and be like, oh man, they dated for 9 years. So we are high school sweethearts.
Yes.
So it wasn't like we could have got married. Well, I guess depending on where you live in the world, we could have got married right away. But we were high school sweethearts who went to different colleges, which also accounts for some time where we were together but apart. So we did date for 9 years. Technically, the high school years I don't count because it wasn't like we could have got married after year 1.
Right, we were babies,
like an older couple might.
Right,
right. But
and also that was a choice because I wanted to finish school first.
Right. And again, that's probably something we'll talk about too,
right?
Somewhere along the line, and kind of like that thought process that we both shared. Throughout college and then even after college, kind of deciding what we want to do moving forward in our relationship. But we have been together somewhere around 24 years, which is more than half of both of our lives at this point. And so that is part of the reason why we feel like we may be somewhat qualified to give some advice or at least to share some ideas. And the second part of that is probably because we really are invested into our relationship. We really love one another, and we, because of that, are, constantly looking at things and ways to get better in our own relationship.
Right.
And being able to share some of those findings with you guys, I think would be great, because for me, the reason I like the whole fatherhood thing coaching wise is because I feel like if I can help make better fathers,
Yeah.
then I can help create a better world, selfishly for my children, but then really for everyone. Right. And I think marriage and relationships are great kind of starting points for happy childhoods and better adulthoods for the next generation. And so helping to build and bridge gaps in relationships between married couples is great.
Yeah. And I just have a passion of working with people, all kinds of people, but mostly, you know, I think that if we can, you know, heal a lot of marriages, right, then we help not only the next generation, but we also, right, like we're modeling as a people just, you know, how to be in better relationships in general, because there's, you know, the statistics that 50% of marriages end in divorce, and I think it's increased since then, and probably since the pandemic increased as well. But really, the reality is there's certain things, you know, that break down marriages, and I think it's important that we, you know, talk about, you know, those different things, or talk about what can keep a marriage healthy. So yeah, we want to kind of, like you said, bridge the gaps, maybe provide just a space, you know, where you can hear and see people like us that look like us talking about this topic.
Yeah, because it's a very important one. I'm a product of technically two broken marriages. You know, my mom and dad split up, and then my mom and stepdad split up. And I know from the outside, kind of looking at it, what it was like for me to deal with those two things. And so as much as we can, we try to keep people together and build happy relationships and marriages, right? Because I think there's a flip side to like the 50% of marriages end in divorce, and that's like 50% of the marriages end up successful.
Right.
And if we can look at it that way with more of a positive lens, then maybe we can get it to 51% and 52 and so on and so forth. But I think as long as we see it as the negative side, then we kind of run into trouble.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, my parents, they got divorced also. They were actually high school sweethearts as well. But I think they made it about 25, close to 25 years before they split. So, you know, things happen right along the way. And then also you have to look at, even we'll talk about that too, because there's probably, hopefully there will be some young people who are thinking about getting married, listening to this, so they can kind of look at what choices are they making when they're deciding who to choose for their partner, and, you know, those sorts of things come into play as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for what's to come with this. I always enjoy talking to you. And so talking to you about something that we both are passionate about and feel is important, I think is going to be great. And hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. And like selfishly, I'm going to enjoy it, but hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. And you're able to, you know, take some things from it to strengthen your already strong relationship, or to add strength to some parts that maybe are struggling.
Right.
Which kind of brings me to the topic of this particular episode is good versus great. Right. I think a lot of times we look at relationships as either good or bad, right? Like our relationship is good or our relationship is bad. And if we don't have a bad relationship, then we're okay with it just being good.
Right.
But something that I talk about a lot in my coaching is that good is also the enemy of great. Because if great is an option, why just be good?
Right.
And so I think a lot of times in relationships, when we're not arguing, when we're not having issue, when, you know, there's no, you know, major issues, then we just coast.
Yeah.
And we get into routines and we just do whatever it takes to not have problems. when in reality, we could be making our relationship better.
Right. There's always room for improvement in some area. So.
Yeah. And I think for us, we obviously have, we are in a long relationship. Like we've experienced periods of just coasting, right? Where we're just good.
And just content with like, oh, things are good. Yeah. Which is good. Like you should be in spaces where you're content and you don't feel like, oh, I'm working and there's this uphill battle or something like that. Right. Like that's good. But like you're saying, can it be better?
Right.
And what does that look like?
Right. And I think that's hard for people to do, is to kind of, self-assess, or to look at the relationship from that viewpoint, because I think for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable because you're looking at the relationship like it's not good enough, right? Like it's good, but maybe it's not good enough. And I don't think that's it.
No,
I think it's good. Ooh, how much better can it be?
Right.
Like if this is this good now and we're just coasting, imagine if we were intent, like if we just really went for it, like how good could it be? But I don't know that we do that enough.
Yeah. I don't think most marriages don't do it, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a significant amount of marriages, there's some kind of challenge.
Right.
Right. And there might be like these ongoing challenges that kind of pick up, that go up and down, like, things that you've been dealing with for however long, that sometimes get better, sometimes are worse, sometimes are good, like coasting. Right. And that can kind of, change. So what you're saying is, what if it's just like kind of good and just you're content and everything's just flowing well? You're saying, how can you kind of make it kind of better? But a lot of people aren't thinking about making it better because it's good.
Right.
And then, or it's not good. Like I was just saying, like there are already challenges. Right. So you're like, you can't even get to the great part because you have like the challenges.
Yeah. I think too, the problem with it just being good is that you're one step away from it being bad.
Right. That's
right.
True.
Like if it's great and you fall off a little bit, you fall back to being good.
Right.
And we're like, oh man, it was great, but at least we're good now. We can work back to great. Right.
Yeah.
But if you never experience great, then all you know is good and bad. Right. And so if it's not good, then it's bad. If we have an argument, we're in a bad relationship. If we have something happen, infidelity, or, and that may be a deal breaker for most people. But like if you have some things that are happening, we're not seeing eye to eye, we're not communicating well, something happens, right? There's a ton of things that happen in a relationship. We go from good to bad because those are our only two levels.
Right.
That's all we know. Right.
Yeah.
And so for however long until we can reconcile our differences, our relationship is just bad. Right. Whereas if we can elevate it to a level where it's great,
right.
If we have an argument, we just had an argument.
Right.
And we're not okay, but we're okay.
Right.
Because we know this ain't bad.
Right.
She still loves me. I still love her.
Right.
Our relationship isn't in shambles. We have some things we got to work on, but we're still good.
Right. And you know that you're intentionally working on things too. So even, and I mean, we'll kind of get into the details of that later, but I always like to tell people, if you know that your partner and you know that you are working towards something better, or you're not having like those, like I said, patterns of issues, because you're intentional about it, then even if you do kind of go back a little bit or have an issue with something, it's not that big of a deal, because like you can trust and understand and respect that we're a work in progress.
Right.
We're kind of, working on that thing. It's not like no one cares, no one's saying anything, you're trying to hide it, or, you're acting like it's not a problem, that kind of thing. Right. Like you're being intentional, so you can give some grace. I mean, you should give grace all the time, but you know what I mean?
To an extent.
To an extent. Yeah.
Right.
Depending on what it is, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you said something there about like, kind of a work in progress. Right. I think even on your path to great, or even when you're great, it's always a work in progress. Right. I think there's kind of like the societal rom-com idea of like this perfect relationship where, we're in a field running to each other and there's daisies, and there are,
don't hate on rom-coms.
I'm just saying that like that I think that has set a lot of people up, men and women alike, to believe that relationships are a script.
Right.
And it starts off this way and it goes this way and there's a happy ending. And, and there's like this trajectory of how things go. It just get better and better and better. Right. But that's not necessarily real.
Right.
It can be getting better and better, but it's just like, it's still a wave.
Right.
It may be going higher and higher on a wave, but there are downs,
of course,
and those are real and they're okay.
And they're okay.
But as long as you're trending towards great, right? You may never get there, but you're trending towards great and you're doing things on purpose to be great.
Right.
I think you can experience some of that rom-com stuff.
Right. Oh yeah.
But I think people think right away it's going to be, butterfly, like the show we're watching, the one that got away.
Oh yeah.
There's like this idea of like, when you step in front of me, there's going to be like, my heart's going to flutter and there's going to be fireworks and there's sparks, and that may happen, but I think people expect that to be like every day,
forever and ever and ever.
Every day I wake up and I look at you and there's like, stars in your eyes. The music starts playing in the background. Right. I'm like, that's not realistic. And people will see that and be like, oh, well, the spark is gone out.
Right. But that's not
how it works. Right. There's always going to be work. So like, don't be afraid to work on your relationship if it's good. Yeah. Right. Like if your relationship is good, great. You've got a great point to start from when you start working. If it's bad, it's going to be a uphill battle.
But it's worth it. Right. It's potentially worth it. Right.
Right. Depending on if you've got the right person,
right,
you're in the right relationship, then yes, it's going to be worth it. And even that, I think as an individual, you're finding out if that's hopefully you've done the work ahead of getting married, but that's not always the case, right? So you may be dating and in a relationship with that person's representative. And then when you get married and they say, I do, then you get to meet them as a real person. You're like, oof. Right. And so it may not, and I'm not an advocate for divorce, but it may not be the right person for you. But if you are putting in the work to be better for you and better for them, then you'll find out who is or what you need. And if they can reciprocate that, then your relationship gets better. If not, then you know what you need and who you are. And then, maybe in round two, in another situation, you can be better for that person or something. I don't know.
For yourself.
Yeah, for yourself, really. Ultimately.
Yeah. So we have 4 specific ways that we are going to say really will help you move from just having, like you said, a good relationship to, moving towards a great relationship.
Right.
And I think the first one that we try to do frequently is be very intentional about the time that you're spending together and making sure that's quality time. And really what that looks like are like dates, dating still when you're married and dating each other still.
Right. Yeah. Each other is the key, right? Don't be dating other people.
So dating each other while you're married and taking like small trips together. Even if you have kids, like I said, we have kids, we still take small trips together. Or larger trips, and just being intentional about the time when you are together, whether it's, okay, we're going to, talk, or we're going to watch this movie together, or we're going to, whatever it is, right? But like being intentional about having that quality time, reducing the distractions, because that's the thing that, I hear a lot too when working with couples is that, this thing, I have it right here for my notes and timer. We're not doing well on time, I was going to say.
No, you're good.
But, having just freedom from all of those other distractions, right? And really just being able to have that quality time with one another, which is kind of how this podcast was born, because we, go on dates and we just talk about what we want, what we want to do, our future goals, ideas, and just supporting one another, right? And shooting ideas and all of that kind of stuff. So just really having like that intentional time together and enjoying it. But I think that is like huge because a lot of couples, whether you can't get a babysitter or you don't want to get a babysitter, you don't want to ask for help, or what are the things? I mean, there's so many things that come up. You're just busy, or you just get tired of, like you said, you're coasting. What do you need to go on a date for? Well, we can just sit down, have popcorn, and watch our movie after the kids go to bed, or, whatever it is.
Yeah, so. This is something that from talking to guys more often, you mentioned being busy, and that's one of the main excuses that guys give for why they aren't dating their wife, right? Like we're busy, we work, we come home, we do this with the kids, that with the kids, and then we're too busy. And for some guys, because all of those other things are taking precedence, or they're prioritizing making sure they're making money to help take care of the family, they're going to practices and games and stuff like that, they're doing things around the house, it isn't an instinct to plan to go on a date, right? Because we just ate dinner together last night. Why are we gonna go pay to go eat dinner together? Right? Like you said, we had popcorn and watched the show together. Ain't that quality time? Right? Like, and for guys, that is to an extent, right? Because we'll accept that and we'll be like, oh, that was great. Like we made a great meal, and we looked at each other and we talked and we hung out with the kids, and right, we'll make the excuse that we're spending quality time, right? But I like to say when it's not instinct, it has to be intent.
Yes.
Right. If your instinct isn't to date your wife, you need to be intentional about it and put it on your calendar. Because if you're not thinking about it, and I've gotten better, I think, because I was in your shoes. Like I didn't think about it. Like it wasn't at the top of my mind that we need to go on a date. We spend anytime we're not at the house. Like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like we're at work, but then when we come home, we're together all day. I'm like, yo, we spend plenty of time together, but it's not the same.
Right.
But it's not an instinct for you to want to spend just quality time where both of you are together, not having any other distractions. Then you need to be intentful about it and put it on your calendar. And it may seem weird because it's not like spontaneous, but it's a way to get it done. Right.
Right. And I want to talk about that because that's huge, because a lot of women will say, well, no, I don't want you to plan it. I want you to just want to do you know, this is the way, unfortunately, and I'm not going to put it just on women, but this is the way some people think, like you should just want to, and you should just naturally do it. And this whole idea. And it's like you said, this is not a rom-com, right? Like, and you're not, maybe you didn't express what you wanted, right? Or for us, like, you know, there was a time frame where I didn't want to go out as much, you know, or I wasn't really into like, ooh, do this and this fancy stuff and romantic things. I was kind of like, oh, I could, you know, that's cool, but I didn't like necessarily need it. But then as I shifted and different things changed in my life, I was like, I really want that kind of thing, right? Like I want you to surprise me and take me on a random trip or do like random things, right? I didn't know that I kind of shifted and wanted that until I realized it, right? But you can't read my mind, right? And that's, you know, important for us to realize, is that there are no mind readers that exist. And it's okay to say what you want and need. But also at the same time, it's important that once that's said, we can trust that you as the husband or partner or whatever is going to kind of do that and reciprocate it, right? So we may not need to know that
put it on my calendar.
So basically, you know, we won't know that it's not spontaneous, right? Like if you are scheduling it and being intentional about it because, you know, you need to kind of use your tools, right? Like the calendar or whatever you need to just kind of keep it fresh and keep it fresh in your memory when you have so many things going on. Then if you plan something, we'll just think, oh my gosh, right?
Right.
We're going on this random date on a Friday night, but it's like you had it planned for 3 weeks for you, right? Maybe you didn't say anything or something like that. So it really just depends if that's a need.
Right. And I think the thing too that happens is once you start putting it on your calendar and you see it coming up and you're like, oh man, I got to think of something to do on that day. Like I can't just have it on the day and then be like, try to figure it out that day. You will at the start. But I mean, there's only so many things you could figure out on the day, right? And so then you start thinking ahead of time, whoa, I can do this. So you'll see something randomly like, oh, that'll be good for a date night. Or you'll find like some new restaurant, like, oh, that'll be great for a date night. And then it's on your mind now. Now it becomes more instinct, right? You still leave it on your calendar, but now it's more instinctual and you're starting to think about things you can do for those days. And then it gets better, right? Because then you can start doing like more exciting things, right? As opposed to just checking out the new restaurant in town. You may, because you had a few weeks now, plan to go on a real like date. You know what I mean? And again, she doesn't know what's on your calendar. Don't put it on the family calendar. You can.
He's giving you tips.
You can put it on the family calendar, but don't put what you're doing on the family calendar, right? Let it be a surprise to her. Because that way she does know that you're working on it, which is important. And I think we'll talk about that in a second. And then two, she can not plan something when you're planning something and cause an issue, you know? Right.
Yeah. And I think that, like you said, that's just taking your relationship to that next level, right? Getting more into the great and not just coasting being good. Because yeah, we were good, but now it's like, we're great. Like you're surprising me, you know, regularly or thinking of places to go. And then I'm doing the same. I'm like, oh, I think he would like this. Let me try this. And then that it alone becomes fun and connected, you know, in a different type of way.
Right. Yeah. Which is important. Right. So yeah, I kind of alluded to it and I don't know where it ranks on the 4 tips.
They're all, yeah.
I don't know if
they're all good.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a ranking. I think they just kind of in order of the way we talked about them, but, I lost my train of thought just now.
I think you're going to say self-improvement.
Yes. No, but
No.
self-improvement
Okay.
works. Okay.
That was one of them.
Yeah. I think when we're in a relationship, there's two people in a relationship, and often we talk about like how we can make the relationship better. And when we say that, we're talking about making both people better. I think the one thing that we have control over always, whether it's in a relationship or otherwise, is yourself. And I would say if you can work on you, right? Making you a better man, a better husband. Let me back up. Making you a better you. Right. Making you a better you makes you a better man and a better husband. Figuring out some of the things that you need to do in order to make yourself better, whether that just be more like reading more self-development books or like, watching things on YouTube or getting healthier, right? So that you are able and have the energy to do some of those things, some of those date nights where you don't feel like after you get off work, you just need to grab a beer and go to sleep. Whatever it is that you can do to make yourself better. And there's a laundry list of those things. Making yourself a better person makes you better for the relationship, which in turn makes the relationship better. Because if I'm not happy with me, you're not going to be happy with me. And I think we went through that at some time, a couple of times, right? Like I was going through things in my own head. And because I'm wrestling with those, I don't want to, or I don't have the energy or the patience to put into the relationship. Right. Because I'm so invested in like fighting my own demons, right? Like I can't handle you asking me to do something or needing me to do something outside of what I thought I already needed to do. Right. And so it's really important to be continuously working on yourself, but specifically if you're trying to make your relationship better, maybe draw the focus away from the relationship itself and put it a little bit back on you, not selfishly, but put it back on making you better. Yeah. You healthy, you better, whatever that means. Right. Because that's different for different people. Right. Like there's, and on my end, one of the things that I think I had to realize was like, I had to be responsible to take care of myself and not put that responsibility on you. Right. And like really work on my own self-care and kind of fix some of those areas, whether it was like, making sure that I got, to the gym or making sure that I'm not like doing everything for everybody else and making sure I was doing, stuff for me too. And, now I'm like 100 times better than I'm going to, a long time ago with that. But that was that self-improvement that was needed so that I could be, fully better. Right. And within the relationship in general, but just for myself. So I think there's things that we know we need to work on individually that will eventually help also the relationship be better, but we don't necessarily always do those things. So that's one of our things that we think would be helpful for all marriages, right? If you look at yourself. Right. And you work on whatever it is that you need to work on. Right. Because in order for me to love you, I need to love me first. Yeah. I need to know what love is in order to give love. Right. So I have to, like we say, fill up your own cup. Right. Put your own mask on first. Those things. Right. Because if my cup is empty, then I can't pour into you. I can't help us be great if I'm not even good myself. Right. And I think it comes back to like, and we talk about in the beginning of a relationship, people say, what are you bringing to the table? I think you have to continue to bring to the table the best version of yourself. Right. Because if I'm only giving you 70% of me or 70% of the best version of me, then I can only expect to get 70% back. Right. Like I don't think relationships are 50-50. Right. And I think that's a big misconception. I think I'm giving 100 and you're giving 100. Right. Because if you're only giving 50, then you're not gonna do well, right? If you're only giving me 50% of you, right? Like I need the whole thing. I need the whole clip. I need all 100, and we can work together for both giving everything we have. But in order for you to give everything you have to figure out what some of your issues may be. Right. Break down some of those barriers so that you are able to open up fully to that person and be vulnerable. And I think that's a big problem for guys is vulnerability, right? Like we always want to seem strong. And we always want to kind of give off this image that we are invincible. Right. And that's just not real, guys. It's not. And I think when you get to a point where you realize that and you're able to be honest and open with yourself, you can be honest and open with your partner. And then things get fun. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Because it becomes a real safe space. Like I can fully be myself. Yeah. And I'm okay. Like no one's going to judge me because she knows me. She knows who I am. She knows my weaknesses. She knows my strengths. And so I don't have to pretend.
Right.
I get to be who I am fully. And then that helps us get to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with that, just, I think it's hard for people to focus on themselves. And sometimes, a lot of times I'll hear about, nonstop what the problems someone has with their partner is. But because it's easier to, right, look at the relationship issues as it's your partner, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is there's a little bit of some kind of responsibility you hold as well within whatever the issue is that you may be having in your relationship. So really it's probably on both ends. But it's hard for people to look at, okay, well, what role am I playing, or what's my particular issue or challenge, or what is something I need to work on. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard. I mean, it's hard to ask yourself those questions. So I would say take a moment and just do that. Right. Because there's probably something, whether it's something like you're not as financially responsible as you could be in the relationship, and then that's upsetting your partner, or that's leading them to be more controlling, or right. Like, yeah, there's all these patterns and dynamics that end up occurring. And each person is responsible, but you can only control you. So if you work on whatever it is, whether maybe you got some anger issues that you got to work on, or maybe you have some mental health situations or issues that you maybe need to go find an individual therapist for, or, like I said, maybe you're not taking time to kind of do more self-care, and that would kind of help you have more peace or something, or joy, or whatever, to kind of be open up fully. But whatever the case is, it's important that you look at yourself, look within, and figure out what you need to do to be a better you for you. And ultimately, I know we talked earlier, or you just made a comment about, like, we don't promote divorce or anything, but and it's not about it, but if that happens, that's your situation, whatever self-improvement you work on when you're in a relationship, that's going to carry you for the rest of your life. It's also important just for you, right? Regardless of what your situation ends up being or happening in your marriage, or what happens after that, what self-improvement, can you do that's going to help you in all areas of your life?
Yeah. And I think just before we move on to the next one, I think a lot of times people do get divorced, and then what's the first thing they do? They start going to therapy, they start working out, they get a better job, they start taking care of themselves, they start doing all these things where they're working on themselves because they realize that they weren't maybe that in a relationship, or they're like, whenever this next relationship comes, I'm going to be ready. You know what I mean? When you could be doing that while you're in the relationship you're in, and have a stronger, better relationship.
Yeah, like Lawrence could have, done so much better.
I mean, he could have
just had the new Lawrence in the relationship. She didn't have to wait till after, But anyway.
Yeah, whatever. Lawrence was, his path was his path, right? I don't know that he really did anything different. It was just a timing thing. Because what did he do different? He got a job, and then because he had a job, he was able to do some of those other things.
Nah, he was going out more and doing more things, like,
Yes. Okay. Before we get any further sidetrack,
even mentioned that he was depressed. He worked on himself.
He was depressed, exactly, and he didn't work on himself. Let's leave it at that.
Yes.
All right. What is number 3? Do you remember?
No, but that's why I have this out, so I can look at my notes. We did some pre-podcasting on a random date night, actually, the other day.
Yeah.
All right. So routines and periodic check-ins. Was that the one you were going to talk about?
Yeah. Because I was talking about, like, putting it on the calendar and it being kind of a scheduled thing. There's one thing that I don't think really anybody does often enough. And I would say I don't often enough. We do, when we go on our dates, we talk about where we're at and what we're doing and what we want. And I think it's really important to self-assess, to assess the relationship periodically, because it changes as you change, as you grow, as you explore. If you're doing the work on yourself and you're figuring things out about yourself and you're becoming better, you're going to want more, and your relationship needs to follow that trajectory, right? But if we never look at and assess where our relationship is, if we get married, right? Let's say we get married. We got married, but let's say we get married, right? Where we are right now. in 6 months, we're totally different people.
Right.
Even if we don't do anything different, our situation is different. Like, look at what the world has gone through in the last 2 years. Like, if we did nothing else, the world has completely changed around us. We need to look at where we are, what we want, and where we want to go.
Right.
If we don't have that, then we're going to be lost.
Right.
Two people lost just argue, right? Like if you go on a trip and like back in the day, I don't know how old everybody is, but back in the day when you had to print out the MapQuest or somebody just had to remember the directions. Once you get lost, everybody's arguing, right? Everybody's pissed off. Like, you should have made a left turn over there. I told you this. And everybody's going back and forth and arguing. It's because we aren't getting to the destination we think we need to get to.
Ancient times.
And then I'm mad at you because you didn't give me the right direction. You're mad at me because I won't stop for directions. And then everybody's arguing. Right. And your relationship and your marriage is the same way. If we aren't constantly checking in, like even now, okay, so I put the address into Waze, right? I know that she's going to say the direction before, not you. Waze is going to say the direction and at some period of time is going to tell me when I need to turn.
Right.
But what do we all do? We're all looking
we
at
still
it,
look.
right? We're all going to check on it and make sure she's right. Or she hasn't said anything in a second. Let me make sure it's okay. The relationship's the same way.
Yeah.
Right? Like we know where we want to go. We sit down and talk about it on Monday, right? By next Monday, we probably should be like looking at each other like, hey, how was your week?
Right.
How are things going since the last time we talked about it? Like, is everything kind of on the same track? Or do we just wait until we're 5 exits past where we're supposed to go? And then we're like, how come you didn't say nothing?
Right.
Right. I think that's really important from going to good to great is to constantly check in.
Right.
Not where it's like annoying check-ins.
No.
But I think periodically, when there's major life changes for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
When you as an individual feel like, hey, I need to see where she's at for sure. But then they're probably like every other date, right? You don't want to have these kind of deep relationship conversations every day. Sometimes you just want to keep it casual.
Right. Of course.
Right. And just have fun and enjoy the night.
Enjoy.
We had a club dancing. I don't want to be like, so where do you think things are going in our life?
That would be creepy.
Right. You want to have fun days, but then sometimes you need to sit across from each other with a candle and just like look into each other's eyes and talk about like, where do you see your future in the next 6 months? Like, what do you want to do with yourself?
Yeah. And I think also I was going to add, I usually have my clients do check-ins when there's challenges too. So that way you're checking in on how it's improving or what's going on. Right. So let's say something's happening and we've done this for sure. Like, because we have to learn though, right? Like you would do something would be going on. Maybe you're working on something. I'm working on something. But you would like work on it in the way you thought it was going to be fixed versus like what I actually wanted or needed or asked. Right. And just kind of learning each other and figuring it out, especially early on. But, that can happen. Right. And so I tell them, well, do check-in so you can see, right? Oh, how is this going for you? Like we were working on X, Y, and Z. Right. So I'm checking in. What do you think about our progress? Right. Like, do you see some of these things that have been shifted or changed? Because I think sometimes when people don't hear that from their partner, that they see the progress, that makes them upset. And some people are like, well, I just won't do anything. I won't make this better because you don't even notice that I'm doing it. Right. But they can't. But if you don't sit and have check-ins about it, then you won't know that they notice that you're doing X, Y, and Z, or you won't notice that maybe you're not doing exactly right. There may be more clarification needed, right? Like maybe they wanted X, Y, and Z, right? Or maybe you started to do well and then you fell off.
Right.
Because that's a huge issue I hear from a lot of women in general. It's like they tell their husband they want something or tell them to help with something. And then they do it for like a short period of time. And then when everything's all good again and you're coasting, then they stop doing it, right? Or they forget. And so, or they're doing something else, right? But then that still feels like for your partner, like, hey, I told you what I wanted. I said what I needed. And then you started to do it and then you stopped. And that gets frustrating if it keeps happening in a pattern.
Right.
So it's important that both are checking in like, hey, yeah, I noticed, right? Sharing appreciations. Like I noticed that you are making this adjustment or this shift and I appreciate it. Right. But also like, hey, how am I doing with this? Right. Like I've been intentional about X, Y, and Z. And I'm a work in progress. I'm not going to be perfect, but like I'm intentionally thinking about this area of improvement.
Right.
So those check-ins are so important.
And like I said about the scheduling thing, if you're working on something and you check in with your partner and you find out that it's going well, that's the best time to apply pressure and continue to push it harder, right? Because okay, what I'm doing is working. Let me double down, right? Or if you check in and it's not working, like, ooh, okay, and I need to retool, try something different, right? And now you have an opportunity, because you're having that conversation, to really find out what the different is, right? I think a lot of times as guys, we're fixers, right? And so you say there's a problem. All right, cool, I'm gonna fix it. No, don't worry about it. I got it. And then we just start doing stuff, right?
And random stuff.
And then 6 months later, she complains about it. I'm like, what the? Yo, I've been working so hard at fixing this. Like, I can't believe that you don't even care that we're putting all my heart and energy. Like, I've been there, fellas, right? And I felt those feelings. But the problem is that I was doing it the way that I would do it. I was doing it the way that I would receive it. I was doing it in ways that I would notice that it was getting done. And I was doing it. So I knew it was getting done, but she didn't see it that way. And I never asked her, how would you like me to go about this? Which is kind of weird, because sometimes there's situations where, like, you don't want me to be like, how do you want me to take care of it? Sometimes you do want me to just take care of it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if I don't ask you how you would like it, then it's going to be worse.
Right. For all of us.
For all of us.
Yeah.
So sometimes she's going to have to bite the bullet and tell you the way that she would like it to be handled.
Right. Yeah.
So that she isn't more mad at you later on when you don't do it the right way. And I think that's something that takes maturity from both people.
Because I hear so many people say, like, I don't want to have to tell them. I don't want to have to constantly, or not constantly, because I agree. Like, you shouldn't have to constantly tell anybody anything, right? Like, you should be able to trust them to do it once you tell them at least once or twice. But I think it's more of like, well, I just want them to magically know, right? Like, that part, I had to work on that and humble myself. Like, you're not going to know in what way specifically I need this exact thing done, right? Because I need to even know what that looks like,
right? And check working on yourself.
Then I can communicate to you. I could tell you there's an issue, and then if I just give it to you, you're going to fix it in the way you think. But I need to know, how do I need it fixed in the way I need it fixed, not the way you might think or need it fixed. Right. I mean, that just sounds very complicated, but that's how we are. So, but I do hear a lot of people, women specifically, because I talk to mostly women friends and relationships and all that kind of stuff. But I think, the biggest issue that I hear consistently is, I don't want to have to tell them. And we have to figure out a way to get through that just as people. Like, that's your partner. It's okay that if you have to explain and break it down and all of that. It's kind of like when when your kids, for those who have kids, or even when you were a kid, and, there's a certain way that your parents cleaned up, like the bathroom. And if someone just told you to walk in, you just tell your 6-year-old, go clean the bathroom, that's going to look different to them than it is to you. Right. And so you have to show them and tell them specifically how to do it and what that looks like. And then hopefully they now have that information and they can run with it and do what you needed or how you told them. But we can't just expect and assume people are going to just meet a need for us in a certain way without explaining what that looks like and what that is, and having to just give the detail and having to ask for what you want. Right.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Yeah. And I think especially for new couples, I think we have to think of a relationship, and we say like newlyweds, that relationship is a baby.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that baby may mature in dog years. Like, you may get really mature fast, or it may grow like humans do. Right. And so you do, when you have a young relationship, have to teach each other how to love one another, how to respect one another, how to, and I think a lot of times we come into it like, I'm an adult, he's an adult, she's an adult. Like, you should be able to, you should just know this, and you should know how to do that. But that's not the reality. And if we aren't, treating it that way, like it's a young relationship, then we have problems. The way to grow the relationship faster is to nurture it, to pour into it, to give it what it needs to feed the relationship, which is like going on dates and continue dating, which is understanding yourself and giving a better version of yourself to your relationship. that's how you get it to mature to a point where you don't have to explain everything anymore because you've done the work and they've done the work, and now they can better understand you because your relationship is better than it was when it started.
Right. And both parties have to humble themselves and see each other as a part of the same team. I think sometimes I'll talk about that a whole other time, but people can feel like, oh, it's me against them when you're getting into it. Right. But really it's you two
versus the world.
Yeah. Like that's what you decide, right? Like you chose to get married, so you're on the same team. Because if one is unhappy, then your relationship's unhappy. So you gotta help the team.
Yeah. All right. Before we get too long, let's get this. We got the last one, number 4. Let's do it.
The last one is just, work. So now we talked about self-improvement. We talking about just in general, if you want to make it to the next level, is doing any type of couples workshop, couples therapy, couples retreat, couples something, right? So that you are, or listening to a marriage podcast together, right? Or reading a book together about marriage, but just nurturing the whole relationship. And even when things are going well, like you said, it's good, but you want to move it to that great, then there might be something that you can learn or something you can try or something new, exciting, whatever it is, right? That can be helpful, or even just getting tools and tips by going to couples therapy. You don't have to only go when there's significant problems.
Right. And I think that's probably one of the bigger issues is that, like I said earlier, when things are going good, you have the best level of jump off, right? Like a lot of times we'll wait until things are bad and we're like, oh, we're going to go to couples therapy, or we're going to work through this workshop, or we're going to, start reading a book, or we're going to start listening to a podcast because that's going to make our relationship better. And it can and sometimes will, but what if your relationship was already good, right? And you added that on top of it, right? Like you're adding fuel to the fire. And that's another way for you to level up, right? Is doing those things when you're already good. And again, like I said, good is one of those things where it stops us from being great because we're good. We don't need couples therapy. What? Right. Like anybody that's in couples therapy is because they're about to go get divorced, or they're about to, and that's all we see, right? Or people who are going to couples workshops are like, oh man, it must be something wrong with their relationship, and no, that's not the case. No. And they're making the relationship better, stronger. They're learning more about each other. They're learning different ways to be better in the relationship. And they may end up with a strong relationship than you, and yours is good. Yeah, right. Exactly. So I think that's something that we really need to continue to push towards, continue to, like I said, add fuel to the fire of your relationship. Don't wait until you get the "we need to talk" text to start talking. You know what I mean? Like, and fellas, this is something that I think we're probably the most guilty of. And I can only speak for fellas. So ladies, you guys may be guilty too. Is like, we will not, in a lot of cases, do more than what's necessary. We will do the minimum, right? Because it's like the minimum effective dose, right? If it works, it works. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. Because it's working, it's good, right? And instead of adding more to it, finding ways to be better, which is like, look, I just don't want it to be bad. At the end of the day, I just want to come home and have peace, and that's it, right? I don't need it to be crazy. I just need it to be peaceful, right? And so we'll just leave things alone until it gets crazy. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like your grass, right? Your grass is growing, you go cut it. Right. Like you have to continue to take care of it. You have to continue to manicure it. Like it's going to continue to grow. If you don't water it, it's going to die. If you don't cut it, it's going to look crazy. So you have to continue to pour into it and do things to take care of it. Your relationship's the same way. The grass isn't going to stay the same height. It's going to grow or it's going to die. Your relationship's the same way. Yeah. Right. It's not just going to stay smooth. Right.
Not by itself.
Right. Right. If you pour into it and water it, it's going to go up, which is great, but you got to cut it, level it out. Like it can't go crazy. And if you don't water it, it's going to go down, it's going to die, and it's going to look terrible. So you have to continue to do things for your relationship. Yeah. Even when they're good. Even when it's good. And you might get to couples therapy and have nothing to talk about, but that's better than waiting until you have a whole lot to talk about. Right. Right. You know what I mean?
And there might be, believe me, there are things that people do not talk about and they let sit and simmer for a long time So you may be walking in thinking, well, why are we here? And they have a whole slew of things for you. So, that's why, communication, we'll talk about, communication, I'm sure at some point, but that's why at least the check-ins are helpful. Right. And like, we're not perfect at check-ins by any means. Right. Like we check in at least, because we have busy lives. Right. So we check in at least on our schedules and planning things as a family regularly, like weekly, right, every Sunday or something. And that's helpful just to get like the business pieces out of the way of the relationship. Right. But then the check-ins with each other, like you said, we try to go on, I guess we should say how often we go on dates and stuff. We try to go on dates at least every 2 weeks is like our baseline. We're trying to get to, sometimes in a month, depending on what happened, it might just be once a month.
Right.
And then, if we're lucky, like, I don't know what was going on this week, but we
like 3 dates.
Yeah. We were like, oh, we're randomly together. Let's go. My mom took the kids to Chuck E. Cheese. Let's go have lunch together. Right, like, hey, we're free. My dad took them to see a movie. Let's go to, dinner. Like, what's going on?
Right. And I think the cool thing to note about that is like, there are going to be times where that opportunity comes, and we would have previously just like laid in the bed and watched the show and just like just been around each other. Or it would have been like an opportunity. Oh, I got to go run and do this errand.
Right.
I'm gonna go do this. You go do that. And we'd be apart from each other randomly. But now it's like, okay, how can we get closer together when we have these times? Like, how can we enjoy each other's company? How can we be a relationship, be a husband and wife in these times? Yeah. And then having things that you can do.
Right.
That's what I say. Like, if you're thinking about it more often, then you have stuff to do. There's places that you know about, or there's things that you're like, oh, I want to try that. Oh, we can randomly try it now. Let's go do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So frequently at least, because like I would say at least once a month we're checking in. And if there is anything particular, like I said, if there's a particular thing that we've said, oh, we really need to work on this area of our relationship or whatever it is, then we'll check in a little more frequently about how that's going. But, even just once a month kind of check-ins, or like you said, once every other date or something like that would be a good starting point.
Yeah. Have fun though. Have fun. Don't make this a business thing.
No.
Like, I know we're like trying to give you tips and we're saying to do it, these things, and it doesn't have to be the whole date. It could be on the drive over to the date. Like, we're driving to the place and okay, while we're driving, let's have a talk about this. Or we can be partying in the car on the way over. And then when we get there, we talk for a few minutes about whatever we need to do. And then we enjoy the date. It's not, I don't want it to sound like,
yes, no.
You go to the date and then minute one, you're talking about this. And then like we have minutes and we had a checklist of things you got to talk about. No. You know what I mean? Because then if you're not having fun in your relationship, right, you're definitely not going to go from good to great. Because you're like, look, every time I take her out, we got to talk about, she's going to tell me stuff she doesn't like about me, and I got to try to figure out how to fix it. Nobody wants that, right? So, like, go have fun. Chat, then. Yeah, it's go have fun. Go enjoy the relationship. Go enjoy each other. Yes. But also understand that you do need to have these things, these checks in place, right, to continue to move forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And usually, right, because we're intentional about it, it's like, hey, I noticed like you're doing this and this, and I appreciate it. It's like that check-in. It's not like, you're not doing this and this. Right. Right. Like, don't take that to a date. That might be, if there's challenges, that might need to be a like, hey, we need to talk. Right. There it is. Let's do that over the, at home. But don't go out with that. Have fun. Enjoy.
Yeah. All right. We got to wrap up.
Yes, we do.
Actually have kind of a date, kind of.
Like a group dinner.
Yeah. So we got to get going. But this first episode was fun.
It was.
I think we should probably keep doing this.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, guys. We are going to sign off. But if you are listening, watching, you can find us on Instagram at We Can Talk. Or no, we need to talk pod. Or no, We Need to Talk Cast. Yeah, We Need to Talk Cast on Instagram. So the all one word, We Need to Talk Cast on Instagram. You can find Ari at Your Happy Living Solutions, all one word. Mm-hmm. And you can find me at Forfeit Fatherhood, all on Instagram. The podcast will have a website and all that stuff soon. But since we're just getting started, those are the ways to find us. We hope you enjoyed the first episode and we look forward to talking to you on the second.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.